WCDMA와 HAPA 상품과 모바일, 브로드밴드 전략 등의 헤드를 담당을 하고 계십니다.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here, pleasure to be in Seoul, pleasure to be with SK Telecom, and of course it's a great pleasure to talk about 5G. I think over the last few months and so, the industry has really gained in momentum on 5G. Now, there's a lot of focus on what shall we have available to launch. And when on a full scale should it be ready? Well, I'd say at least 2020 a number of networks will be there. But also, 5G should be competitive going forward. 2030, 5G should still be competitive. And I say that in relation to one of the questions we heard earlier, what are we going to use 5G for? Why do we need the speed and so on? And think of it, what is the internet in 2030? I don't know that. But I know we're going to make a system that can take another leap forward and enable a lot of new user behavior, a lot of new business coming along. First, let's look at where we are today. This is a snapshot on how internet is being used. I think it's impressive. 700,000 new internet users per day, as an example. You see the number of likes on Facebook, 2.7 billion, and so on. Already today, there are more mobile internet users than there are fixed internet users. And that's just, I think, an enormous development that has been evolving over the last few years. Now, that's not the end. This is a slide that shows numbers that Ericsson are predicting and that we publish twice per year in the Ericsson Mobility Report. We believe in 5 years' time, 2020, over 6 billion smartphone subscriptions in the world. So imagine pretty much all of them being connected and mobile on the internet. So I'd say the internet will all be defined by the mobile use case in only a few years to come. And as a whole, you can see here over 9 billion subscriptions and 8.4 billion mobile broadband subscriptions. What will that demand for in terms of services and possibilities for companies taking advantage of this new way of using the internet, this way of interfacing with people and doing business? Well, it's in the next few years to define that. And that in itself will be a stepping stone to 5G. So across now 5G network, what shall we demand of it? Here are a few areas. It needs to be scalable. We heard earlier 50 billion connections. Yeah, I believe in that. We already, almost 10 years ago, we made that vision in Ericsson. We're going to have 50 billion connections. We said by 2020, and I think that's a little bit too optimistic, to be fair. But maybe 2030 we're there. Think of it, 2020 we say 9 billion mobile subscriptions. That's without any machine-to-machine. Add on that another 5 or so on average machine-to-machine devices, and you're at 50 billion. So yeah, it can be done, but give it another 10 years. System needs to be flexible in many aspects. You will have new behavior, you will have masses of people, you will have masses of gadgets being connected that we can't really predict. The system needs to scale up and down in capacity and in terms of what service that should be offered. Sustainability is, of course, a very hot topic on everybody's mind. I'm quite sure here, having SK Telecom here, that they don't want a larger power bill. It needs to be more efficient. Security, that's even more important, I'd say. Over the last year, we've had a few incidents in the world where government agencies have gone after individual companies. Security will not go down in interest, that is for sure. Both individual security and also the security of the padding that we're using in the industry. If the SIM cards are being threatened, there may be some unrest in the industry. It needs to be standardized, I say. Why do I say so? Scale. I think it's a tremendous scale we have in the industry thanks to the 3GPP standardization. Last year, there was over 1.7 billion handsets that were produced with the 3GPP standardization. GSM, WAB and CDMA and LTE. Over 1.7 billion handsets. It's a staggering amount of devices. And lastly then, it needs to be reliable. With your lives totally connected, with your business being totally connected, it has to be there. You have to be able to always be able to leverage on the fact that you are connected. And that's not only when you're downtown Seoul, it's also when you go way outside. So here are a few examples of this. The system needs to be extremely fast. By that we mean that we need to kick up the user rates. To be fair, I don't know what a single user should use 1 gigabit per second for. But I know from a system point of view it's good. That means each session is shorter and quicker. The system gets the information, gets out of the system, and releases resources for other users. And I'm quite sure far younger people than I will come up with applications that will demand more higher speed as we travel along the route to 5G. So I don't want to limit them. Massive machine-to-machine communication, we heard that a few times. It's illustrated here with containers. That's, I think, is an obvious thing, but containers are big. Even the content inside of containers, given that they have coverage, should be able to be connected. Anything that deserves connectivity should be connected, I argue, going forward. Super real-time and reliable. Yeah, here you have a power grid as an example. And we need to kick down latency. We need to make sure that systems are fast and snappy so that we enable new kinds of applications. And then it should work in crowded environments with people or with gadgets. Now, what will this open up? Well, it's all written in the stars, right? But I'm sure as you take another leap forward in what we can do, it will open up for new businesses. Already I know in some markets healthcare is moving along a lot, and I'm sure we'll get there with LTE, but I'm sure it will be even better. We showed, I think in the last presentation, we saw an excavator. At Mobile World Congress, Ericsson prototyped an excavator that was remotely controlled 3,000 kilometers away. You were sitting in a chair with goggles and you could control it. Well, that's one vision of what it can be used for, right? But of course, it will open up for all kinds of new businesses. And I think we in the community here, operators, vendors, and so on, we should stimulate now that in the current pace with LTE, new businesses come in and then prepare themselves for what more they can do as 5G hits the market. Now, taking this all into consideration then, you get a big stack of requirements, right? And all of them are there, but not all of them are easy to combine. Here's some examples. If we take now machine-to-machine communication, you will have requirements that will ask for, let's say, extraordinary long battery time. A device should be able to operate on one charge for 10 years. Okay, why on earth do you need that? I don't know. But I'm sure if you have 10 years, you will open up for new possibilities. I'm quite sure some surveillance equipment, whatever, tsunami report systems and so on, will stand to benefit from that kind of ability. And hopefully they will never be used. But once in a while, when they're needed, they should be able to wake up and be attached to the system. That is one side. On the other side, let's take very real-time critical systems. Maybe traffic safety and control, cars talking to cars, cars being connected to signs and sensors in the road. Then, of course, you need fast transmission, short delays, a very snappy communication, largely different from the previous example. This range needs to be there in the standard. And I think it will cater for different groups of devices with very different characteristics. But each device does not need to satisfy all of it. because then they will be too expensive. From a network point of view then, what we foresee if we go left to right, on the left-hand side you will have categories of devices, users, and target businesses. You have there as an example the ordinary users with a smartphone, you have healthcare and so on. They have very different requirements. On the very right-hand side you have the cloud. That's where the service is. That cloud in itself can be provided for by the operator, and the application can be provided for by the operator, but it doesn't have to be. The core thing is in the middle. That's the network that the operator has, and it will be virtualized as we illustrate here. But the key thing is that the network will be able to deliver services for the different classes of devices and user groups on the left-hand side. And this is what we call then a network slice. In 5G, we need to be able to provide slices that has different characteristics depending on what kind of application and what kind of user group that the operator targets. So what kind of requirements are we dealing with in the industry? These are some of them that are now being discussed, and I'd say as a rule of thumb that an order of magnitude to maybe 2 on all the vital requirements. Latency should go down, here we say by a factor of 5. That would bring us down to say a few milliseconds. Sometimes we're very demanding and say, can we get below 1 millisecond? It would be amazing. If we can, it will require for change in the radio stack, in the transport stack, all the way up to the application layer. But it should be, if not below a millisecond, at most a few milliseconds. And you can see data volumes 1,000 times more, number of connected devices up to 100 times more, etc. And I think this is largely doable. Remember, we have as a goal that it should be in full commercial swing 2020. It's another 5 years down the line. Should be a little bit challenging, but I think it can be done. Also pleasingly, I'd say, there's surprisingly large amount of agreement in the industry on these high-level requirements. The way to get there is not clear, right? Overall it's clear. We go into 3GPP and we make the proposals and we vote and agree. But what will be included is not clear today because it hasn't started. So what you see here is a bit of a smorgasbord, different areas for the access techniques that are being discussed in the industry. And spectrum flexibility is certainly there. Spectrum is a scarce resource. We have to make sure we can allocate more spectrum at higher bands and also allow for flexibility how we use FDD and TDD. This will of course call for a lot of cooperation and agreement in the ITU-led WRC conferences, etc. Antenna techniques will improve adaptive beamforming, multi-user MIMO, etc. techniques that are now being discussed. And I'm sure, I'm confident in a few years' time we will have nailed down. The techniques are largely known. It's more a matter of how much complexity we think is doable to bring into the chipsets and how far it reaches us onto the requirements that we want to meet. Spectrum, as I said, it's a scarce resource and largely important. We believe that LTE will be mainly of 2 parts. The evolution of LTE, LTE advanced and new things coming afterwards. And then the new radio access technology, which on a higher protocol level is all synchronized with the LTE evolution. The new parts we believe will be primarily in spectrum above 6 gigahertz. That's where we can find large chunks of spectrum. And in the existing spectrum, we think LTE evolution will be dominating. This is to make sure that we have a smooth migration up from today's system and allow for backwards compatibility. Key thing then is to make sure that the industry can allocate the spectrum here. Very vital things are then conferences end of this year and 2019. And that's what we show on this slide. How do we evolve now? Nowadays, 2014-15, I think focus is on release 13. Preparation and execution of the WRC conference in November this year is crucial. We at Ericsson, we are looking at the testbed and its evolution. We've shown in Barcelona a 5G testbed transmitting over 5 gigabits per second. This is the first step. We're taking more steps, making it even more advanced, of course. Then 16 to 18, preparations for the 2019 WRC conference, very crucial. That's when the UN will say then what frequencies around the world will be allocated for 5G. Also, I think in that time frame we will see the first pre-commercial trials of 5G. There's a Winter Olympics here, there's Summer Olympics in Tokyo. Both of these momentum will drive the industry to be early out with 5G, I'm sure. And then in 2020, we should be ready in the industry to have the first 5G systems fully commercial. I'm very happy with our collaboration with SK Telecom. We are working here with LTE Advanced, and then driving it into 5G in a number of initiatives. And some of it you see here, some of it is coming. So I think already with SK Telecom as an example, there is plenty of collaboration now to step by step build up knowledge in the industry and make sure that we are prepared for 5G. So with that, coming to conclusion then, 5G, it's one network for multiple industries. Core is that the operator is in the heart of it, can provide with network slices that then gives services for very different kinds of user groups. Those services are generated either from the operator side or from an app provider. Overall, it's an industry journey with the ITU, 3GPP, make sure we get industry alignment and can drive scale and keep costs down. Again, 1.7 billion devices sold last year. That trend will continue thanks to 3GPP. And lastly then, it is a technology evolution, largely software-based, very new antenna technologies. That's where we can increase capacity and use the bit rates. And I think key then, from the operator side, you should be able to leverage from what you have today. You have made investments, you will continue to grow that subscriber base, and you will upgrade it and bring it gradually into 5G. And you will be there in Korea. I know you are spearheading very well. I think momentum for 5G, I think, is very strong here in Korea, very strong in Japan, and in the United States. And I think that's good. 3 very key markets you can help to drive the industry. So please do so. Thank you very much.
네, 에릭슨의 그 매그너스 에버브링 씨 발표에 대해서 진심으로 감사드립니다. 바로 이어서 그 5G 인프라 혁신 주제로 HP에서 오신 토마스 쟨하우저 CTO께서 오픈 네트워크 플랫폼 투워드 5G라는 주제로 발표를 해주시겠습니다.